Bay West Church meets at 100 Emerson Road in Palm Bay at 11 a.m. on Sundays. We're glad you decided to check us out. God has a specific message of hope for your life and mine today. So listen up.
Now, I was watching last night. If you heard anybody yell or anything, it was because I was watching Alabama play LSU. If you don't know anything about it, if you're a guest today, I'm just going to let you know right off the bat, I'm a big Alabama fan. I hope that doesn't turn you off or whatever. You know, some of you guys never would know that. But I was watching Alabama play last night, and one of the things that struck me, Alabama's got a quarterback. His name's Tua Tagovailoa. I don't know if I pronounced that right or not, but he's from Hawaii, and seems to be a good young man. I mean, I don't know him personally. You know, he talks a lot about Christ. He seems to carry himself well in that way, and he plays really well too. On top of it, but last night it was interesting to me. I watched him several times go into the injury tent that they have, because he was wearing a large brace on his knee, and it was obviously hurting him a lot. But I watched him continue to come back out and continue to go back in the game and play. And it reminded me of something that a coach told me about. First time I guess I ever heard it was when I was in high school, talking about mental toughness. And what they said that was something that when your mind is able to get your body to do things that it doesn't want to do. You know, a lot of it. When your mind is tough enough that you can go through tough things and through hard struggles, and you can make it through that. There's a mental toughness that happens. You know, I think one of the hardest things to do, you know, is to stay in the right frame of mind. Because at the time, I'm watching him go through this really tough thing, and he's conducting himself well and going through that. And all of a sudden, I realize, as I'm standing up yelling at the screen because I don't like the officiating, all of a sudden I realized, you know, Jim, you're not very mentally tough. You know, because there's something happening on a screen, and you don't like it, because it seemed that they were letting LSU hold all over the place and all kind of stuff like that. I don't know if you're an LSU fan. I'm not trying to bag on you or anything like that. But I don't know. It was making me upset. And I'm going, I can't believe you didn't do that. I'm yelling at the screen, if you probably heard me. But I'm yelling at the screen, and all of a sudden I calmed back down, I sat down, and I said, you know, if there's anybody who needs this sermon tomorrow, Jim, it's probably you. You know, because you're not very mentally strong at this moment, because the outside circumstances are influencing you so much that you're acting, you know, you're yelling at refs that can't even hear you. You're not making a whole lot of sense. So as I preach this sermon to you today, know that I will be listening as well and taking all the things that God's telling through His Word into my heart as well. You know, our culture, I believe, needs a dose of mental strength and mental toughness. I really believe we do. I believe our culture right now, we crave something called outrage. And I believe we live off of that so many times. I feel like and it's not wrong to be outraged. Usually outrage comes when you see something so terribly wrong that you're just frustrated. I've got to stop that. You know, and it moves you. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but I feel like our culture has used outrage in an improper way. And what it's become is the justification to complain. You know, that's hard, because the Bible tells us we're supposed to live without complaining. You know, that's not something we're supposed to be doing. So how do you justify something? In many circumstances, what I see outrage being used as sort of a carte blanche to throw off all the rules and any means of civility. If I can get emotional enough, if I can get angry enough, then I don't have to follow the rules that the rest of you guys got to follow, because I'm mad. I watched a video this week of a young lady on a college campus, and she got so angry with a situation and a discussion, she took a drink and she threw it and she hit this dude. And she ended up getting arrested. But I watched her after she hit it. She expected everybody just to be okay with that. And she said, look, I don't care because blah, 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 blah. And she stated her reason for outrage. But she was so outraged that what happened had nothing to do with her, wasn't happening to her right then. She was just there. She was so angry, she threw her drink. She abandoned all semblance of civility and expected that to be the justification for doing that. And I think that's our culture in a nutshell right now. If I can get mad enough, then I can do whatever I want. But I'm going to tell you, that's the opposite of having a sound mind. That's the opposite of having a sound mind. And I don't think anybody wants to live that way, to be quite honest, because I don't think you want righteousness to be based on how angry I can get about something. I don't think you want, I know I don't want righteousness to be based on how angry Dave can get at something. I don't want that to happen, man. I'm just telling you. Because then it's based on our personal feelings. There's no standard across, and it's just perspective, and that's what righteousness is. And I don't think anybody wants to live that way, but we are slowly inching ourselves into that zone. And what that displays is a weak mind, not a strong one. One of the benefits of that God promises us is actually found in 2 Timothy. I want you to read it with me here. 2 Timothy 1:7. It says, "For God did not give us a spirit of fear, but of power and love and of a sound mind." That's a promise that God's given us here. Having a strong mind in a stressful world can make a huge difference in our lives. Often the mind is the place where the battle is won and lost so often. We tend to feel like we're made to do it. My feelings, I have to do it because I feel a certain way. No, you don't. You make a choice to how to respond to your feelings, and your mind is the one that does that. And what God tells us is when you follow me, I can help you live mind strong. I can give you a sound mind to deal with stuff. I tell people all the time, you can't control your feelings, but you can control how you react. That's up to you. Nobody can make you so mad that you pop somebody. What happens in that moment is your anger, and you may make a split-second decision, but your mind makes a split-second decision. I'm going to pop somebody in the face, and you talked yourself into it in that split second. And probably usually the first time when you do that, you come right off of that thinking, boy, that wasn't really a good idea because now everything's going crazy. But here's the thing that a sound mind helps us with. And when the unseen bill comes, and you're tempted to freak out, a sound mind can help you. It can help you in that situation. When you're met with a crisis in your home or your work, instead of going into immediate Eeyore mode and, it's the worst thing in the world, we're just the world's about to explode, No, you don't freak out. You have a sound mind, and a stable mind can help you in that situation. When tragedy strikes, you have a foundation in that sound mind. And even when you're dealing with like mental illness, a mind bolstered by faith and community can help you have the courage to seek help that's necessary to survive. I'm going to tell you, mental illness is that. We'll talk when you talk about the mind. A lot of times, people just break it down to just be positive. That's all that mind is. But I'm going to tell you something about mental illness. Mental illness is called illness for a reason. Okay. And I've never seen anybody who was vomiting profusely in the floor and had the urge to say, well, you just think positive about it and feel better and it'll be okay. I don't do that. I go to a doctor, get this thing checked out. I'm going to tell you, I've struggled with depression throughout my life, and it's difficult. It is very difficult. It's not just something about, you can't just slap yourself in the face and think of something funny and keep going and find the energy to keep going. You can't do that, because when you're in that depression mode, nothing is funny. Nothing. Nothing's funny, nothing's happy, there's not anything there. You're feeling, I almost drowned one time in the ocean up in the Panhandle. And I swam against the current so much like a moron. I was an idiot. Praise God, he was watching out for me. But I swam so far, my muscles got so tired, I could not will them to swim another stroke. There wasn't anything there. There wasn't, scream and get adrenaline. The adrenaline was gone. And if there wasn't a really cool guy from Valdosta, this offensive tackle from Valdosta State, Georgia, who was also a lifeguard that was very near me, I probably would have drowned. But at that moment, I couldn't make myself do anything. And that's what it feels like when you're dealing in a deep, deep depression. It is hard to will yourself to something. And so the thing about it is, and I want to tell you, if I couldn't make them. It's very frightening in those moments. Now, we go through this series. We're going to talk about a lot of things, but I'm going to tell you, if you are, and hear this, if you're on Facebook and you're listening to me and you're in your place this morning or whatever, I want you to hear this. If you're struggling with mental illness, please, this is not the series that says, just put a smile on and think positive and you're going to be fine, okay? That's not what I'm trying to do. Fake it till you make it. That's not what we're saying. Look, if you're struggling with thoughts of harming yourself or harming others or things like that, you need to go to a professional, and you need to, just like you would go to a doctor if you're bleeding or your arm is broken, you need to go seek that out. And you don't need to let any kind of fear of shame or something like that. That's irrational. I'm going to tell you, the sound mind of the Lord will help you to be help you to be secure enough to realize when you need help and you need to move on. That's part of, and you need to go get that. God promises us a sound mind, but I think so many times we don't take advantage of that. So how do we do that? You know, when you play sports, I mean, and I'm thinking about the ball game last night. You know, I'm not everything's a Sports Illustration. Sorry about that. But last night I was thinking about the ball game, and you know, when you get fatigued or you get distracted mentally, one of the first things to go when you play athletics is the correct form to do something. How do you throw a football? You know, when you're playing tennis, the correct stroke to hit a tennis. You get tired and you want to do it. Your form goes away. You know, and so the reason that athletes and professional athletes do so many reps of something over and over and over and over and over and over again is because they're trying to train their muscles that the natural way that they do it, when they're fatigued and they're distracted and they're mentally exhausted, the natural way they do something is the correct way to do it. And that's why they do so many repetitions. It's all made. It's not figured out. You don't figure out how to do something when you're tired. You train yourself before, and when you're tired, that training comes back. You know, and I think that's a great idea for the body, but it's also a great idea for your mind. You know, and so we're going to look at some scripture today in Philippians chapter 4. So if you've got your Bible, go ahead and pull that out. You can open it, get to Philippians chapter 4. If you have your smart device, you have total reign to pull that puppy out and get on, you know, whatever Bible app you get on. You know, don't we're not going to go play, you know, Endless Ducker or something like that. But I want you to get on the Bible app. You know, if you got to scroll, unroll it. If you're listening on Facebook Live, there's a link on our Facebook page where you can click on that and it'll pull up my notes. And you can actually follow along that. It has the scripture there. However you want to do it. If you're here today, it's going to be they're going to be on the screen. Just go along with it. But my thing, and you may say, why do you always say that every week, Jim? And there's a reason. It's not just because it's something to fill time, because I want to create a culture that says, read the word. Don't get hung up on the medium by which you read it. Read it. As long as it's a correct and reliable translation, I don't care. Get it into your life, because it will create a better situation from the inside out for you. But we're going to look in Philippians chapter 4, verse 6. And it goes like this. It says, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. Now, you may have heard this scripture before. We're going to break it down a little bit, and I hope God shows you some new things from these scriptures that help you where you are in your life with the things that you're dealing with. See, what we have to understand is the world has danger, and there are unknowns. We all know that. I mean, that's a dumb moment, you know, but the hard part is even in a seemingly conflict-free situation. Do you realize this? Even in a conflict-free season, there are loads of things going on that we don't know anything about in our lives. It's like God kind of blinds you to it. You know, even if you're easing through life and nothing's really a problem at this moment, you know, the truth is there's conflict going on all the way around you. There's trouble and there's danger, but God's just kind of giving you a respite from it. We're never going to be without it. In John 16:33, Jesus tells us, you will have trouble in this world. It's going to happen. It's a reality of life. But even in light of that, the Bible warns us about living with worry and anxiety. It says, avoid all of that. You know, in Matthew 6, Jesus plainly says, do not worry about your life. That's difficult. If you're faced with something that's tough, I mean, that's hard. But the thing about it is Jesus wouldn't have to tell you that over and over if there wouldn't be the temptation to worry and be anxious. You realize that? You may think, well, Jesus said not to do that, and I'm having a problem not worrying. Well, Jesus knew that. That's why he told you that. There will always, just as much as there will always be trouble, there will always be the temptation to be anxious about the things in your life, okay? You have to accept that. You have to meet it head on. Okay, there will always be that temptation. But see, the problem is, too, is there's people that begin, when you get anxious, there's people who live off anxiety. Have you ever seen those folks? They just live off conflict, man. It's like if there's something not going crazy in their life, they just don't know what to do. Then they go get in somebody else's conflict, and they make a big mess, you know. And they're always in the middle of it. Because there's an energy that feeds off of that adrenaline rush of something being wrong. There's people who always center toward the wrong thing. If they look at their life, they can have 1,000 things going right, one thing going wrong, and they're going to go, wrong thing, red light. Oh, my life is the worst thing that you've ever seen in my life. You've seen, you know these people, right? Sometimes you are those people. Sometimes I'm that person. Some people are like that all the time. Sometimes people wave in and out of it. You know, the truth is, the hard thing is sometimes people jump into other people's conflict when there's not enough conflict in their own life. You know that? You see people like that? Proverbs 26 tells us that equates jumping into someone else's conflict to like grabbing a rabid dog by the ears. Can you imagine that, you know? That's dangerous. But people live that way because they need the adrenaline. And I'm going to tell you, that's not how we're supposed to do. It's dangerous. But the energy and the ego boost of being the person in the know, you know, being the person, feeling of accomplishment and importance because you're beneficial to that situation, and people are coming to you for advice or coming to you for, you know, what are the details and stuff like that. Some people are like that. But that's a dangerous, dangerous way to live. We're supposed to stay away from anxiety about anything. Well, how do you do that? You may look at me and go, Jim, that's great about don't be anxious. That's whoopity-doo. How do you really do that? Well, it talks about it right there in that verse. It says, in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. So no matter the situation, your first recourse to be mind strong, to have a sound mind, should be prayer right off the bat. I'm telling you, we try to train our kids, you know, going down the road, you see a wreck, first thing we do, hey, let's pray for those people. That's great. How do you do it in your life? A lot of people say that, well, all we can do is pray. And I say, look, the first thing you should ever do is pray. Go with the atom bomb immediately. The most powerful weapon you have is prayer. Don't sit there and throw your wisdom, of your pellet gun wisdom at it, man. Go ahead and take off with the prayer that you have. Speak directly to God about that. You know, it's, we talk about people, there's just, and what we have to understand about prayer, sorry I got off, now I'm back. Okay, what we have to understand about prayer is prayer is simply communicating with God. And this is what I challenge you to do. When you're in the middle of a tough situation, don't pretend like you don't want God to know that you're struggling. A lot of times we do that. I go directly to God and I tell him everything. Look, this is why I'm mad, God. This is why I'm upset. I think that should stop. And it's really getting on my nerves. And sometimes I'll say, God, look, I'm really not happy with you right now because you're allowing that to happen because it's getting on my nerves. And I will have this conversation. And I'll just say it. You know, I mean, you act like, well, let's say that, you know. Well, God already knows, you know. He's not stupid, okay? He knows everything there is to know, so just say it. And I can't tell you how many times in the laundry list of my thing to God, what's going on in this situation, that God takes my own words and flips them around on me. And it reminds me, as I'm talking about these Bible verses that I've read here and yon, and I couldn't even think of them at the time, but as I'm talking to him, magically, they come back to my mind. And he could talk me down in the middle of my upsetness with him faster than anybody. You know, and sometimes it even makes me mad because I wasn't really done freaking out. You ever been there? Maybe you're talking to somebody and they immediately, you know, you're mad with them and they immediately apologize and they apologize too quick and you had like a real big speech plan and now you can't use it. You know, you ever been that way? Sometimes I'm that way with God, you know. God, I can't believe this is going on. I want to freak out, and you're just talking me back down, and it's a hard change for me. Sometimes it is, but that's what there's no one in this world that can talk you down quicker than God. That should be the first conversation you go to in every situation. You know, we get on, sometimes our first thing we want to do, I want to go call somebody, and I want to vent to the neighbor. Or I want to get on Facebook and vague about it, you know. And I have those situations too, because there's things you want to say to people that you just can't say. You're too afraid to say to their face. That's really what it is, you know. And so if you got to just throw it out there and they just figure it out on their own, then I don't have to worry about it. You know, that's not how you do things. Go to God first. God should be the one relationship that you can tell anything to. Anything. Yeah, that you think, oh no, I would never say that to. Yes, say it. Get in your car, drive around, explain everything that's inside of you to God. It's not because he doesn't know. He absolutely already does, but in the expression of that to him, he can do something with it that you can't do going and sharing that with anyone else. The first person you go to is already God because he already knows. And here's the thing. You don't just go to him and you list out the stuff. You can dump all your stuff on God in prayer riding around in your car. But here's what I'm going to challenge you to do. It says, don't be anxious about anything in every situation with prayer and petition with thanksgiving. You got to have thanksgiving in there too. I want you to, there's a time when I talk to God about stuff and I talk about, oh, I can't believe this happened. This is driving me nuts. When can't you stop this? Here's what I think, this is just making me so upset and angry and I can't believe they said this about me and blah, 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 blah. And there comes a point in time that I try to work in there and I go, okay, but let me think about all the things that God has done good for me. Because there's 1,000 things you talk about. I talk about that person's got 1,000 things going right and one big thing going wrong and they stay on the one thing and forget all the good stuff. There's a reason he says with Thanksgiving, you need to catalog and list the things that God is doing for you in the midst of your struggle that seems to be hurting you and riling you up so much. A lot of times when you start making that big list and you go down at all the things that God is doing for you right now, the things that he's done for you in the past, sometimes I go on and I start thinking about things that I've seen God do in other people's lives. It reminds you of the characteristics of God, and you begin to trust that. Now, this is going to sound funny and maybe a little bit, condescending, but, well, I'll tell you that in a minute. I'm going to tell you something about most worried, okay? We are the most worried when we are the least reflective about what God has done in our lives. I'm going to say that again. You are the most worried about one situation. We are the least reflective about all that God has done in your life. And when you become more reflective about all the things that God has done in your life, you become less worried about what's going on right now because you have the history and the track record of what God has done for you. The second thing is by prayer with thanksgiving, but also by petition. This is where you bring the list of stuff to God. God, I can't believe they said that. Make them apologize to me, please. Or straighten them out, or fix this, or where am I going to get the money for that? You need to show me. I need a new job. My boss is a pain, whatever it is. This is where you bring the list of things to God. But here's the thing you have to understand. When I go to a mechanic, somebody told me this story a long time ago, and it changed how I approach mechanics with my car. They were telling me, said they went, it was a mechanic that told me the story. Said somebody came to me, and whether it's right or wrong, and it's not anybody in town. So, I'm not, but y'all know I take stuff to Paul Sexton. He's cool. He doesn't do this. Okay? But it changed how I deal with mechanics. This guy told me one time, he said, a guy brought a car into me, and he told me everything that was wrong with it and what I needed to do to fix it, so I didn't worry about it. I just fixed it that, and I sent it off. And I knew that wasn't the problem, and he'd be coming back, but he was adamant that I fixed this thing, and I changed this thing out because he knew so much more than me. So I thought about that. Now I go into it was not me, by the way. Okay, I go into the mechanic now, and I don't say, hey, this is what it sounds like, and I know what it is. It's this. You just need to change that. I go to a mechanic I can trust, and I say, here's what's happening. Figure out what's wrong, because you're the professional there. Find out what's wrong and fix it. I don't try to tell him what to do. And that's a good thing for us to do with God. When we we can dump our problems, we can tell God what we think is right, but at the end of it, you need to be able to say, look, but whatever you decide to do, because you're the professional, I'm good with. I'm good with that. And that's what I'm going to go with. Whatever you decide to do with God, whatever you turn the situation around, where they apologize to me or do what I want them to do, I'm going to follow you in the middle of the situation, and I'm going to be thankful. And I'm going to make that choice because I trust you. This is going to sound funny. I said this earlier because I skipped a paragraph. Boy, I'm just not going good today, am I? All right. Skip the paragraph. This is going to sound funny, maybe a little condescending. But we need to let God just be God. Sometimes we think we know more than him. And we just let him be God. When you let God be God, we begin to unlock fuller potential of being a Christ follower. That's when things get deeper. When we immediately approach God with our feelings and our concerns, all of it, we're letting him be God. Because when you say, the first thing, it's going crazy, I'm going right to God with it. You are saying to him, you're the only one that can change it. You're acknowledging God as God. And when we make him the first ear we want to share with, the first voice that we want to hear from, the final say in every issue, we are just letting him be him. And when we see something amazing happens. See something amazing happen, and it happens in verse 7. It says, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. So when you let God be God in your life, that's when you begin to see the changes in your life and your thinking. When you letting God be God means that you trust that no matter what's going on, He is who He is, and He's bigger than the fear of anxiety that you could choose, and you will choose. It's a choice that you could choose to live in. When that happens in our lives, that's when we stop worrying about our lives and we begin to experience the peace of God in our lives that transcends all understanding. Now, what is that? If it transcends all understanding, how can you define it, Jim? Because you can't understand it, right? Here's the thing that I would say to you. This is how I look at it. It means that at that time in your life when no one in their seeming right mind would have peace, you somehow do. When everybody looks at you and go, I don't know how you're holding up in that circumstance. And you're going, I don't either, but I'm okay. That is the peace that passes all understanding. You can't understand why. It's not a psyche-destroying deal, but it's not. And that's when you're seeing God move in your life. Let me tell you one of the biggest keys to being mind strong. As I said earlier, our world has a popular saying, you just think positive. Just keep positive thoughts, keep happy thoughts. It's going to work out. Just be positive about it. Have faith in yourself, have faith, whatever. It's going to work out. Just be positive about it. And whatever mashup of words you get that convey the key to being mentally strong is somehow just ignoring anything that might be coming at you and just being positive about it and everything will be fine. I'm going to tell you that's a false trail. A strong mind's not a positive mind. That's a false trail. As Jesus told us in John 16, there's trouble in this world. And to combat that, Jesus told us all these things in John 16. Back before he said, look, I told you all this stuff so you can have peace. And you go read back what he told them, he's like, dude, some of that stuff is not positive. That's some scary stuff in John 16 that he told him. And he said, look, I told you all that so you can have peace. You told me all that crazy mess so I can have peace? I don't get it. Look, here's the deal. He says, look, I told you. Why? So that you could find a positive spin on everything? Is that why I told you all that? No. So that you could be able to find the silver lining in every cloud like that? No. Put a good face on it? No. He said in John 16, he says, I've told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. And see, that is the truth about a strong and sound mind. Now, I want you to get this, okay? A strong mind isn't a positive one, it's a peaceful one. A strong mind is not a positive one, but it is a peace-filled, a peaceful mind. And a lot of guys, and a lot of y'all know. I mean, I share this with you guys. I mean, if you're on Facebook, my life's open book. You heard a lot about campaign over the last few months and stuff like that. It's because that's what's going on in my life. That's how God speaks to me. So you hear it, But a lot of you guys know I just lost my mom, and you could think of a lot of cool things to say, but there's not a whole lot of positive spin on that when you're sitting in an MIC in MICU unit. And they're just racking up bills, and mom you're doing everything you can, and you've got one shot at every turn. You've got one decision that might bring hope, and you go for it, and then 15 things go wrong from that, and you've got one more shot that might bring some hope there, and you take that chance, and you're watching your mom, and she doesn't know where she's at, and you're having to, she can't drink or eat, and you're having to dip these little sponges in water and put them in her mouth so that her mouth is not dry and her lips are all caked, and you're taking lip balm with your finger and you're trying to put it on her lips so that they won't be bad, and she's just begging you for water and you can't have any. There's not a lot of positive spin on that moment, and she's probably not coming out. And we're just wasting the time. We're just seeing the time go. And there's not a lot of positive things in that. Sometimes people want to tell you just need to be able to smile through it and just put some positive phrase on it, and that's when people throw out the cliches. And I got to admit, be honest, I threw out some cliches too while I was going through it. People would talk to me, I don't know what to say, so you throw out a cliche. Now, people can get mad about the cliche, but don't hate on the cliche. There's a lot of truth in that. So there's a lot of truth in a lot of them. That's why they're cliches. some of them, they just sound good and they're crappy, but you don't need to listen to those. But, there are some things that are good, and you need to look for that good and hold on to it. But I'm going to tell you something. Just being positive doesn't cut those moments. I'm watching my mom gasp for her last breath. There's not a lot of positive in that moment. I mean, I know where she's going. I know I'm going to see her again. Those are good, positive things. But in that moment, it's scary, and you feel anemic, and you feel like you're failing your mom because she's living in your house, and you're supposed to protect the people in your house, and she's your mom, and you're supposed to be providing for your mom, and you can't fix it. And Katie will tell you, the worst thing I can ever say about something is I can't fix that because I feel like I can. And it's hard when I have to come to that wall that I can't. There's not a lot of positive in those moments. But what brought me through all of that wasn't that I could find something positive to focus on, but that I could draw something from something peaceful that lives within me. That's what brings you through those trying moments. And that's something based on my relationship with Jesus that I've been working on for years. Since I was a young boy of 8 and struggling through my life, that was the foundation of what brings you through those moments. It's not just being able to find something positive to say about it. It's about having the foundation that's laid long before the trouble comes. That makes you able to withstand it. And not just withstand it, but thrive in the middle of it. My mother's life ended, but it didn't destroy me. There's a hope in Christ that sustained me in the middle of that. Same was true when my dad died. It was difficult, but the Lord sustained me through that. He allowed me to have a stable mind. A sound mind, not one that was afraid or fearful, but a sound mind that you could follow and trust. A strong mind isn't a positive one, it's a peaceful one, and that peace only comes from a clear relationship with God, which is facilitated through Jesus and his sacrifice and resurrection connect back to God. Now, what am I saying that to you? What do you take from that today? I don't know what God's been telling you so far, but I'm going to tell you a couple of things that I want you to take real fast. If you're a Christian and you follow Christ and you have a relationship with Jesus, here's some things you need to understand. You need to return to some practical steps. Maybe you're struggling with your emotions. Maybe you're someone who rushes to extremes. One thing goes bad. Oh, it's the worst thing in the world. One thing goes good. Oh, it's the greatest thing ever. Can't believe it. And you just live running back and forth between the extremes. A sound mind will help you settle somewhere in the middle. Because there's a lot of energy to run to each extreme. That's a long distance. Here's what I'm going to tell you a few things. One, whatever you have, good or bad, especially the bad, I guess, in this situation, take it to God first. Don't let your mind run with all the things that could happen. Run to all the things that are horrible. Stop. When something goes wrong, recognize it's wrong. God, what do you want me to do out of this? What are you doing here? This is how I'm feeling. That's kind of scary, but you're bigger. I remember you said that in your word, and you're bigger. And I've seen David, you carried him through a lot of stuff. And, I remember that. I remember Jesus died on the cross. There's not a whole lot bigger than that, taking the sins of the entire humanity of forever on yourself and dying on a cross and never deserving any of it, So I get that. Okay. It's still scary. But you're the God who moves mountains and created the world, and you knew it was coming a long time ago. Okay, I get that. You knew it was coming a long time ago. I can just talk myself through that. Go immediately to God first. Discuss it fully with him in prayer. Catalog all the things that he's already done, that you know from the Bible, that you know in your life, that done for you before and today. And trust in the characteristics of God. I had a friend of mine last week who shared something that she had been losing her faith. And this is somebody that I served in a youth group. She was one of the youth in this youth group like 20 years ago. And I've seen her grow and things go on in her life. And, I'm like, hey, she's one of the ones, because they all don't all hang around, Sometimes, they fall by the wayside. She's hanging in. And she drops us out and says, look, I've been losing my faith. I've been having a problem for the last several months. I've been trying to tell the kids the Bible verses, and I'm not sure I believe them, and it's given me a hard time. And God worked through that situation. When she finally opened up and told a friend, look, I'm having a problem, she said, I know you are. I could tell it. I've been praying for you. And she talks about a time a few weeks, a couple months ago, where God actually broke through in a week, and it was weird how he restored her faith. And she stayed with it. But one of the things she said, she shared a Bible verse, and I wish I had thought about it. I did. I meant to write it down. I didn't. But it talked about how God is faithful. And she said, God spoke to me in that and said, you know what? He can't not be. That's his characteristic. Do you realize that? God's characteristic is that he is faithful and loving, and that he reaches out to find those who are lost. He can't help himself. And that's something that never changes. Where you are, where I am, we could trust in that. And that's how God was bringing her out of the funk that she was in. So I follow somebody who can't help but rescue me. No matter how terrible I am, I can be faithless, but he will always be faithful. And that's awesome. That's amazing. And that's a way you can do that. When you think through these things in your mind, you take it to God first. You discuss it fully with him. You catalog the things that he's already done. You trust in the faithful, loving characteristic of God, of a God that rescues people who need it. And you bring the things that you need to happen. But remember, he's the mechanic. I'm going to tell you what I think, God, but I'm going to go with whatever you come up with, because I know these characteristics of all that you are, and I know eventually it's going to work out. I'm going to go with you on that. And you trust him in the middle of those things. And you're going to have to exert faith for him to discern the issue, but you go with what he brings. Those are the things that you need to do if you have a relationship with Christ. If you don't have a relationship with Christ, all those things really won't help you until you do one thing, until you decide to follow him and commit your entire life to him. You know, all those things, you can speak that stuff out loud. If you don't have a relationship with Jesus, it ain't going to help you a bit. I just tell you. What you need to do first is follow Christ, because all of those things work when you have a relationship with Christ, when you've followed him. And here's where you start. You know, maybe you're here today and you're like, I've never followed Christ. That's not my thing. I came today, somebody invited me, or, you know, I showed up, or I saw the big sign out front, and I figured, well, I'll show up today and go to church. It's a thing. And maybe you're going through some stuff, and you said, man, I got to find a church, you know, because somewhere in your background, you know, God said, look, you know, so God instilled in you somewhere growing up, then things go bad, you better come looking for me. Maybe you put that out there. But you've never had a relationship with Jesus where you've committed yourself day in and day out to follow him. If that's where you are and you recognize today that that's what you need to do, I'm going to show you how to do this. Now, I'm going to lead everybody in a prayer. I'm going to ask everybody to bow their head, close their eyes, and I'm going to pray. And if this is the desire of your heart, what I pray, then you pray that along with me. There's nothing magical about this prayer. It's just the thing it's what you're saying to God about what you are feeling on the inside and what you know to be true. But I want everybody to bow their heads, close their eyes, and I'm going to pray a prayer. And if you've not followed Christ before today, pray this prayer with me. If it reflects the inside of your heart, there's nothing magical about it. The words won't save you. It's a commitment that will, because of what Jesus made to come to us and bring us to him. And here it goes like this. So, Jesus, I realize that I can't do things on my own. I realize that I've chosen to do things differently than you would have me, and that I've sinned. And that sin sentences me to hell. Now, I can't overcome that on my own. I can't do enough good. But I believe that you are the Son of God, and that your death on the cross and your resurrection paid the price for my sin, and it allows me to reconnect with God. So I give my life to you right now, and I trust in that sacrifice. I commit the rest of my life to do things your way, not mine, and I will trust you with the outcome. Thank you for saving me.
Thanks for being a part of Bay West today. Bay West Church meets at 100 Emerson Road in Palm Bay at 11 a.m. on Sundays. Please feel free to check us out at baywestchurch.org, or you can follow us on Facebook at Bay West Church.